Hi, I'm Eleanor Meyerhofer, a native Californian, designer, and digital strategist. In October of 1999, a few years after graduating from design school, I flew from San Francisco to Munich with a fistful of Deutschmarks, a dial-up connection, and an extremely vague plan. 20-plus years later, after a 10-year stint at a global agency, freelancing, and launching 2 online businesses, I'm still here. Now I'm talking to other expat business owners to share knowledge, stories, and inspiration for other non-Germans running businesses in Germany. I'm here with Lora McInturf, and I'm going to ask you the question I ask everybody on this podcast, which is, what is a 2-minute story of how you ended up in Germany?
Okay. I saw that you were going to ask that, and I thought, "Ooh, 2 minutes is tough." You could see I even slipped and was like, "Why couldn't it have been 10?"
Yeah.
Um, the true root of it is in middle school. So I'm from the US too. In middle school, my parents made me take the hardest language that was available because they thought I would be bored with everything else, and so I ended up in German language.
Huh.
And yeah, and so that led to a few years later us taking a German exchange student,
Mm-hmm.
which then led to our families exchanging over the years. And after I finished the bar exam, I took a trip around Europe because I was like, that's the last time I'll get a big long vacation
Mm-hmm.
to see my exchange family. And my now husband is my exchange family's son, the original student, his best friend, his best friend.
It's your husband is the best friend of your host family's son.
Yes.
Ah, wow. And
Yeah.
so you fell in love, and I mean, how old were you at that point in like after high school, so before college?
Yeah. No, it was after I took the bar exam, so I was 25.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. No, wait, is that right? No, 20. What is the math? 23, 24, whatever. Anyway, early
Yeah,
20s.
20s.
Yeah, and we did the long distance things for a couple of years. And my exchange family, so I'm in Stuttgart, my exchange family is in the Stuttgart area, so I see them all the time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So that brings up another interesting question. So you kind of came here at the start of your career. You'd passed the bar. Yeah,
Yeah.
tell me about that a little bit.
Yeah. So I actually stayed in the US and practiced law for several years and
Okay.
then did the long distance relationship thing. And then there was a point where, well, one of us needs to move, and who's the one who's going to do it?
Mhm.
And it was me.
Okay.
So I came to Germany. So we weren't married yet. So I
Mhm.
came as a student and I studied in Frankfurt for a master's in law.
German
And
law,
yeah,
obviously.
no,
Yeah,
no,
okay.
it's finance. It's like European finance law.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I was on a student visa, and then I got hired by a law firm in Frankfurt, and so I worked there as a lawyer for a couple of years.
Okay,
So
okay.
I've had almost all the visas. Like I've been a student, I've been like an employee, I've been a spouse, I'm on a parent visa now, like all and free. I could probably do freelancer now, so I've made the rounds.
Okay, wait, there's a lot in there, so I have other questions lined up, but so then I'm guessing you kind of had a advantage because with all this exchanges,
Yeah.
you probably had pretty good German and also to study. Am I right? You're laughing.
You're like, "No." Probably in the 8th grade was the best my German ever got.
Okay.
So, yeah, because, so when let's say, for example, when I studied in Frankfurt, that was in English.
Oh, okay.
And
The
when I
curse
worked in
of the
Frankfurt,
English speaker.
yes,
Everything's
and
in English. Yeah.
when I worked, the advantage was that I spoke in English and people
Yeah.
wanted me to support them right with that. And now it's the same. So even though I'm sitting here with, lots of people around me, all of the clients I work with, I work in English. So I'm working with people over the world, and it's just sort of a repeat of the same point.
Yeah, yeah. I feel that. That was my experience too. Just quick, funny side note. In 7th grade, I had this teacher that was really ambitious and had us learn foreign languages before you had to in high school, or like just dabble in them. And I remember picking German, and then say, why would I ever bother with this language? I'm never going to use it. I switched over to Spanish, which I can speak nothing of anymore. But anyway, so good to hear that your German topped out at 8th grade. Okay, so your background is a lawyer, and
Yeah.
you now run a business called The Inner Advocate.
Mhm.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I'm gonna go on a little detour and then I'll come back
Sure.
to it. So I say that I ended up in Germany, but then my husband started taking expat assignments. So we moved around the world a couple of
Oh,
times.
okay.
So I actually moved here to Germany this time from Canada. So in
Oh,
all of
wow.
those moves, it made it very difficult for me to work as a lawyer because either it was really difficult to just work as a lawyer because of
Mhm,
all the
mhm.
licensing requirements, or we would move in such a short time frame that to find a job, I would then have to like quit after I just found the
Yeah,
job.
yeah, okay.
So it made it very difficult. So I needed to, for me, I wanted to find something that made use of my background, but wasn't being a lawyer. So what would that
Mhm,
be? I mean, there are many things, of course, right?
mhm, mhm,
But also realizing this is pre-pandemic thinking,
mhm.
like what is going to make sense here, and coaching was somebody suggested it to me, and I was like, oh well, I'll check that out, and that is how I ended up in sort of, I would say, in a profession that now feels very saturated.
Okay.
Yeah, but having said that, though, being in the lawyer niche, so I
Yeah.
coach lawyers not all the time, but some of the time, and also supervise lawyer coaches, but not only lawyer coaches, but having that sort of background clear thread in the work is a distinction because according to my unofficial count, maybe there's like 4 or 5,000 lawyer coaches, but
Really?
uh-huh, but well, maybe I don't know what your face if that means a lot or a
Yeah.
little bit, but there's only a true handful of ones who do it full time.
Okay. No, I thought that was a lot. I'm
Okay, you
surprised
thought
that
that
there
was a
are
lot.
some. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But there are millions and millions of lawyers, right? So
Right,
there aren't
also,
really
yeah.
yeah, there aren't enough
Okay.
coaches really. So it's a very a small space to be working in, actually.
Okay, okay, yeah, that's true. You have to do the math there and think, like, there's not 5,000 lawyers in the world, they're all over.
Yeah.
So, okay, that's interesting. So I noticed on your site, so you have kind of a funnel on the homepage, so you have, like, coaching for lawyers and then other types of coaching.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
what are the differences between coaching those 2 different groups? And, like, for the lawyers, is it that you get, like, the individual issues they deal with, or
Yeah, it's a good question because this is one thing when I work supervise lawyer coaches and just say even coaches who come from different professional backgrounds. What is it that we're really doing in coaching versus how do we market ourselves?
Mhm,
Marketing ourselves, we tend to rely on our backgrounds because people like to buy somebody who they feel like understands their situation.
mhm,
In coaching, it doesn't actually matter, not
mhm.
in a pure form of coaching, because Um, it's better when you don't know somebody's background or have the context because then you don't get lost in their story or you don't find yourself
Mm.
colluding with, "Oh, yeah, the legal profession is really toxic, isn't it?"
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so
okay.
another lawyer will buy into that, whereas somebody on the outside will be like, "Oh, well, why is that?"
Mhm.
And that's probably better coaching because it forces you to rethink the frame that you have about whatever is your challenge.
Interesting,
Mhm.
interesting. I don't know enough about coaching, only to know I would not be a good coach to know that.
It's a good
Um, okay, but wait, let me just back up. So you don't coach lawyers, you coach coaches who coach lawyers.
I coach lawyers directly.
Okay.
And then I supervise lawyer coaches, so it's not the same, for somebody outside of the profession, it can feel very similar because it's, okay, you're just looking at yourself alongside your work or your challenge, but there are different sort of modalities or approaches in each one. So I can see that it can get confusing here, but the point is lawyers, lawyer coaches, and then I also mentor coach, which is a whole 'nother, like, thread in the coaching industry that's like, we don't need to go on that path, but I think of it like a three-legged stool. Those are the 3 different lines of services, and for people who
Okay.
know what they are or what they're looking for, I can say, "Okay, so you're looking for this," or "It's more like this," and anyway, then I just deliver.
Okay. So when you came up with this idea, how did you okay, I totally understand you needed basically a portable business that you could be
Yeah,
anywhere.
yeah.
So how did you stand it up? Like, what did you do?
I got a computer and and I hired an accountant, which is a little bit ironic because before I was a lawyer, I was an accountant.
Oh, wow.
But I knew right away, I was like, if this is gonna work, I need to not be trying to do all of the things
Mhm,
because I know I will try. So I hired an accountant. So that's why, like in the group that we share, I can never answer questions about like filing taxes directly myself
mhm,
because I just put that away.
mhm,
So I got a computer, got an accountant. I did fall into a number of the traps that I think beginning entrepreneurs fall into. Like, I need to have a website first.
mhm.
Yeah, I think websites are important, but like to do that first
Yeah, yeah,
before you
yeah,
even
yeah.
know what you're selling
Yeah,
doesn't make
yeah.
any sense. I also trademarked my name,
Mhm,
which as a lawyer, I used to do trademarks at a certain point in my work. I was like, of course I need to do that. I didn't need to do that.
mhm,
But I told myself those things because they felt like easy wins
mhm.
in
Interesting.
in in getting started, but also very costly,
Mhm,
right? Doing things that you don't necessarily need it can get in the way of feeling successful or finding progress in the work.
mhm.
So
So what would you have like, looking back, sort of save this for the end, but for this particular thing, what would you have done instead?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure because there was also something there. So as a service I think that probably being a service provider is a bit different than selling a product. So as a service provider, I mean, a lot of ways you are the service,
Mhm,
right? And
mhm,
that was my way of propping myself up with some kind of confidence and knowledge
mhm,
to fill the gap until I felt like, yes, what I'm selling is valuable and important for the world. So I did that to fill the void. Probably could have done some more work on myself about why do I need to do those things when I can just, like, sell the service, right? But I did it, backwards, and, yeah, I can see that I did that. Would
yeah.
I do that again? Probably not, but I if I know myself well, I would. Just repeat the mistakes.
But so, I mean, what seems implicit in that response too is that there are probably things you could have done, like working your network and stuff like that. So, which leads to my next question, which is, okay, you have this business. How did, you had your computer, you had your trademark, you had your accountant. How did people start finding you?
Yeah. So, there's 2 streams to this. One is I do a little bit of work on a coaching platform,
Mhm,
which coaches out there will know, "Oh, yeah, okay, there's, like, a couple of key platforms that people can work on among many." And I do some work there. So this was already, like, a steady base income for me from the beginning. And I still keep that because I consider it I'm gonna call it my coaching playground
mhm,
because I get a lot of people there who aren't lawyers.
mhm,
And so it's my way of let's say getting more variety in the work, as in who comes and what are the questions that they bring, and also a reality check on myself because I know for myself, if I only work with lawyers, I will think that the whole world is like that.
okay.
So it creates balance in the work for me. So that's one let's say point, and where do I get people? So where else do I get people? Right, LinkedIn. I post every day
Mhm,
on LinkedIn, and I get very little likes on my post, but I
mhm.
get a lot of people who write me and book into my
Interesting.
company. Yeah, so the whole notion that likes are an indication of business success or whatever, it just doesn't actually play out in my world. So some people come from there. I also have 3 Facebook groups, which I know we're gonna get to
Mhm,
here in a minute, but I have 3 different ones that I founded within the same year because I saw opportunities, for places either I would like to be in just because
mhm,
I feel like I need that community, or places where I thought, well, this might be a possible business opportunity. So I'm just going to seed it and see what happens.
mhm,
So there's 3 different ones. One is the Women Expat Entrepreneurs, which is where we met. I also founded and now co-lead it's International Women Lawyers.
hmm.
And then I have the networking group that's just lawyer coaches.
Okay. Wow.
Oh, yeah, you can start to see that, oh, wait, that might be your ideal client in that group or in that group, and that's where some of the people come from too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to quickly back up to the point about not getting likes on your posts. I
Yeah.
think also in a profession like yours, people don't want to out themselves.
That's
Like
right.
I have done quite a few coaching websites, and in some cases, like where somebody specializes in like people that want to leave their jobs, like they're not going to be advertising that on LinkedIn. So it's just kind of interesting how
Yes.
some professions, yeah, and totally lots going on in the DMs a lot of the time.
Yep.
Um, and yeah, it's, maybe your goal is not to be an influencer on LinkedIn. That's not how you're doing things. So, okay, so all the Facebook groups and yeah, let's talk about women expat entrepreneurs. So
Okay.
that is a Germany focused group. What Okay, you talked about a little bit, but what made you co-founded it, correct?
Mhm. Mhm.
And what was the impetus for that?
So when I decided to set up my business, so this was pre-pandemic,
Mhm.
I have a handful of friends here, and only one of them has her own business.
Mhm.
And I felt like I was pestering her with a lot of questions,
Mhm.
um, because that's what friends do, right? But then I thought, oh, I would really like to keep this friendship.
Yeah.
And I said to her, I said, oh, do you want to start this group with me? I guess we still need you to answer questions, but it kind of spread the
Yeah.
love, if you will. And she was like, yeah, sure. And that was it.
Wow,
That
and
was
when
that. That was
this was
it.
pre-pandemic, you said?
Yeah, so 2000, let's see, or maybe it was in the pandemic, but the beginning of the pandemic. I'm just thinking out loud because so before this group, I was not on Facebook.
Okay.
I didn't know anything about Facebook, and everybody kept other people would be like,
Mhm.
"Just why don't you just ask on Facebook?" And then I would, I finally joined and I was like, "Oh, the groups here don't feel like the right place for me." Like I
Mhm.
just had this feeling like this isn't where I want to be asking my questions. So between the friend point and like, "Oh, well, maybe we just start our own group." That's how it came about. And because the pandemic was the way it was, everybody was
Mhm.
suddenly online. I
Mhm.
know you were going to say, so how did the group grow? That was the beginning of it because, people are online looking for whatever. So, that's it though. I mean, it was that simple. We just sort of started out and we're like, "Well, let's see what happens."
But it has grown. I feel so it's like, what, 7,000 people now?
No, no, we're more like, I think 3, closer to 3.
Okay, 3,000. Okay,
Yeah.
still a lot.
Yeah.
But I feel like lately it's just gotten a lot bigger than it was initially. Am I wrong in that perception? I
Yes.
feel like every
No.
time I go back in there, it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Yeah, the beginning and I can compare it across the other groups. This is I mean, my perception, right? I don't know what's actually a fact versus, what I'm just noticing. So, in the beginning, in a smaller group, um, well, first there's an algorithm point, I think.
Mhm.
So as the group gets bigger, it feels like Facebook suggests it more.
Okay.
So that's one
Okay.
point. I also think because it's bigger, there's a lot of activity in it.
Yeah.
So it also helps the algorithm. That's what I tell myself because
Uh-huh.
I've got these other groups that aren't as big
Mhm.
and they don't have as many people joining.
Right.
Could be that it's just a more interesting group topic to
Mhm.
join as opposed to the other ones. It could be that I could even just use myself. In the beginning of these groups, I wouldn't say I trolled, but I'm going to use that word. Trolled other groups, and when people would post stuff that I thought, oh well, that fits with that group, I'll just mention that group, and it would bring people over. So the person who post would come, and then anybody else who read it would come.
Right.
But I
Okay.
don't do that I don't do that anymore because the groups are so big that I'm just
Yeah.
like, it's enough for me, like, I don't need to spend my life like that. So, yes, this group is growing, I mean, regularly and quickly, and there are a number of people who aren't from Germany in the group. And
Oh, really?
we don't exclude them. I mean, they have to be women, they have to be expats, and they have to be
Mm.
entrepreneurs, at least that's what we're aiming for.
Ah, okay. Okay. So it's not just in Germany.
It isn't, but, the large portion of people are
Are.
because
Yeah.
they write, we put, "Where are you in Germany?" And
Mhm.
people put, "Most of the people are."
Yeah.
So it's not that
Okay.
there's, like, it's kind of
Yeah,
strange
yeah.
place. But there are some people in there who aren't, and the reason why we're open about it is because, you know, why people wanna be in a group can have various reasons. Like, one might be they just wish to move abroad
Mhm.
and to be in that space with what that's like, and it's sort of
Mhm.
maybe testing. Is
Mhm.
this for me? Is that what I wanna do? Or they know they're gonna move abroad, but they're not abroad yet.
Mhm.
Or they just like the nature of the group because, yeah, you're on Facebook, like, some
Yeah.
groups are just not really very fun to be in, honestly.
Yeah.
So the mood is different,
Yeah.
and that's refreshing. So, that's my thinking.
Is it a lot to manage?
Yeah. Mm. It's like, having a child, like, you give
So,
birth,
yes.
yeah, and at the beginning, you're like, "What have I done, and
Uh-huh.
how do I do this?" And then with time, it probably does become more difficult and complicated, but you don't realize it because you've been there since the beginning.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it's the same with, having multiple children. You don't tend to get them all at once. They
Yeah.
come in, yeah, in stages. So you just grow into the work that's around it. And as far as I'm concerned, as long as I'm, still enjoying it, I'm not gonna give my babies away.
Okay. And you have other leaders. It's not just you, which also I'm sure
Right.
makes it easier.
Right.
Um, I don't lead any online groups, but I think one of the concerns I would have is just, like, you get, like, a person in there who's maybe, uh, a problem person,
Yeah.
and that I haven't experienced that happening, but have you had any, like, situations like that you've had to
Oh yeah.
deal with? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
In the beginning, because we were still learning how it worked and how we wanted to be, we were really cautious and gave people warnings and had conversations, and we noticed that most people didn't really care
Mhm.
if they were bringing, let's say, bad energy or criticizing people a lot or tearing down or whatever. They didn't actually wanna have a conversation about how to do differently in a group. So as time has passed, if a spam message pops up, which we've had lately, the whole Taylor Swift ticket thing, I just delete the message and delete the person, and that's it. There's no conversation. It's
Wait,
just
what is this? Because 'Cause I've seen this in a new in a because there's another group, Women Entrepreneurs in Munich,
yeah.
and the person who is a leader of that group I saw just something flit across, like, "I've had to block this person in the spam." What is this?
Yeah. So, I guess when if I'm not following Taylor Swift that closely, but she has been here or is coming,
Mhm.
and so there are a lot of scammers out claiming they have tickets that they wanna resell.
Mhm.
And if you watch the group, so I'm in a lot of groups, it's the same message that's cut and paste,
Mhm.
and but it's with different people. So you can
Okay.
tell that it's like, "Oh, this isn't real."
Yeah.
And even if it is real, I mean, is that what we're doing here? I'm not really
Mhm.
sure. This
Yeah.
isn't your
Yeah.
business, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, so just, delete and block and then move on, and I haven't had a single person who's ever been deleted and blocked come back to me and ask me why.
Okay. Yeah.
That would be a sign to me that, "Oh, okay, maybe this person,
Yeah.
yeah, hasn't gotten the message or whatever," but nobody's ever come back, so I think, "Okay, it is what it is."
Okay. So that this is somebody who joins the group under false pretenses and then does their scam. Okay. Wow, that's a sign that you've arrived. There's, like, a whole industry around selling reselling your tickets falsely. Wow, I mean, not that anybody needs to talk about how famous and amazing, Taylor Swift is, like earthquakes and moving economies and stuff. Okay, so I do you have any, like, okay, there's a lot of stuff I mentioned the women entrepreneurs in Munich, and they actually, since that was a more localized group, they started right they had a meetup, like, I wanna say end of January 2019, like, right before the pandemic, and then it all went online. And then but they had been planning to have kind of more, offline in real life stuff. Is that something you think about at all?
Mhm. In the beginning, we also had these thoughts, like, we would have loved or we have loved at the beginning and later talked about doing sort of a traveling conference kind of thing that
Mhm.
helps people come together and network and maybe some learning and support and so on. And we had a leadership team at one point, and we talked about doing it. And I think, at least in this group and the people who I know, because everybody is working on their businesses so hard, to
Mhm.
add that point,
Mhm.
it stretches people too much.
Mhm.
And it takes away from, their business goals and their personal lives and so on. So the dream, I think, still sits there, but would we ever execute on it? I don't anticipate that we will in the near future. And it also brings together the question of, is this a group that could be monetized? And we've talked
Mhm.
about that before. Like, do we
Mhm.
do things where we make money? Well, does any of us want to make that our business? Because then it
Mhm.
becomes a bank account and
Yeah,
blah, blah, blah,
yeah,
blah. And it's sort of like, not really,
yeah.
at least not so far. So we're still kind of in it's kind of doing its own thing, as opposed to being directed by anybody in a particular direction at this point.
Yeah, I think it's can be really tough with groups on for one thing, getting people out of the house, like the conversion rate, even if people want to, I think is very effortful. And there's another big group here. I think it's called Munich International Women. It's a huge group, and they organize breakfasts and stuff. It's a nice group, and I know one of the women who leads it, and it is so complicated. She's like, "Well, we would have to be a Verein or start a business." Like the minute, even if you want to ask people for small dues to just cover it's a lot of work to organize those things. Even run a Facebook group, organize a brunch for 20 people. It takes time. Send out a newsletter. But even that just gets complicated because okay, does it go to the person who's leading it if they have a business? It's like then they gotta make invoices for all these people. I wish there was a easier way, but it does start getting complicated very fast, and it strikes me as being a little bit unfortunate because even if you say, like, "Okay, we're not gonna trying to get rich doing this, we just wanna have this robust community organization," you can't really get compensated for that time unless you turn it into a full business, and then you've gotta, like that has expenses. It's this kinda Teufelskreis or like catch-22.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you say that, it reminds me, um, I'm becoming more familiar with that there are people who are doing the networking thing in
Mhm.
person as their business.
So what does that mean? Like, you
Right.
mean
So their business is that they create physical networking opportunities for people, and to go to that you pay.
okay.
So it's filling a void. But is it filling the void that we want? It's filling the void of that person's ideas, right? So there's
Yeah.
something there.
That still seems like a non-lucrative, very difficult business to me, unless I mean, if you're somebody who has, like, this super I'm assuming, like, a super elite, super big network, I mean, you're just gonna be a really busy person, I think. Getting the space, charging people. Yeah, what do I know? Anybody out there who has, like, a super successful in-person networking business, give me a shout. I wanna have you on the podcast. But I'm increasingly grateful to people that do put on events because it's a lot of work, and they are great to go to. I just went to, last month, this is June of 2024, to the I Am Expat fair.
Mm.
And it was great, and this was more of like a mesa, like a trade fair. I mean, there were a lot of vendors there, the typical things you'd expect, like financial planning and taxes and stuff. But I met a lot of people. Olivia from the group was
Mhm,
there. I went to
mhm.
her talk. And, you know, I am my target market, so it was great to some of the services I was like, "Oh, good, I can take care of I don't wanna talk about, like, my back US taxes." But, it was really nice to meet a lot of people, but it was an event. I mean, they spent, you know, big bucks on that. It was in this massive hotel, and they had people running it, so that is like a whole order of magnitude, and Expat Media is like this big company, so it's not just,
Yes.
a community effort. So I think that's probably the level you've got to have things to really
Mhm.
make it do that. Okay. So I actually want to go back to one thing you said earlier. You said you're on a parent visa.
Yes. Yes.
I, I would assume, I mean, it's kind of none of my business, and if you don't want to talk about it, I'll cut it out. But at this point, don't you have an unbefristet Aufenthaltserlaubnis?
I don't even know what that is what you just
Oh,
said.
oh,
What is that?
a green card, basically a green
No.
card in Germany. How can you've been like here a zillion times and studied. How do you not have one?
Yeah, yeah. So somewhere, I don't know, it must have been when we moved this time because I had a child. Instead of making me a spouse visa, they made me a parent visa because then it wasn't dependent on whether I was married. So if something happened there, like the kids can't divorce me, but the husband can, right?
Okay.
So I get to stay because my kids are German citizens, right? So
Right.
there's an interest there
Okay.
to help me in terms of a greater visa or a, let's say, a more
Green
established
card.
visa. I have never looked into that because in my mind, we've moved so many times in the past that there's a chance that we will again.
Ah, okay.
And to qualify for that, right? I know I would have to do the German language stuff and so on, and I don't.
I
So
actually for that I don't think you do. Like I
okay,
got mine working a zillion years ago. At that time, if you've been working for 5 years, you could just automatically get it. And there was no test, there was no nothing. I mean, now I'm gonna try, when I have the time to dedicate to it. I do wanna get citizenship now that you don't have to give
yeah,
up your other one.
uh-huh,
And then you do have to do a language test. So I'll have to do all that. But I think from what I hear, it's like somewhat easy to pass. But usually I just thought if you study here or you've been here a certain amount of time and working or are married, you just like instead of having to renew visas all the time, you just get
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
residence permit.
Yeah, and I hear what you're saying that there is a lot of possibility there, and I'm really is anybody listening? I'm really lazy,
Okay.
and I'm just cool going in every 3 years and being like, "Hey, I'm still here, like, is it good? We're good? Good." And then I get my little thing or whatever, and then I go out.
Okay. So and that's because I like not because with the residence permit,
Yeah,
like I haven't done that kind of paperwork in years
yeah,
because it's done. But okay, but that doesn't make sense for your life because the thing is with that, if you leave, I think for longer than 6 months, it can lapse. So maybe a visa makes more sense. Anyway, so okay, I guess we'll wrap up here, and I would ask you if you have like any lessons learned or advice you would share with anybody on their
yeah,
entrepreneurship path in Germany.
yeah, yeah. I thought a lot about this, question because people love to give advice, and I do too, and there's a big long list of things I would say, but probably the thing that stands out the most for me is notice the thing in your business or about your life that irritates you, and that's where the work is that you need to do. So, for example, for me, I went through a phase where I was sending uh, paper contracts through email, and
Mhm.
I was booking with people, like, I would be in a conversation like, "Okay, so when's the next time we're gonna talk?" And we get out our calendars, and it would take this 5 minutes of, like,
Mhm.
back and forth, and it really annoyed me, and I also got feedback. I'm like, they're like, "Quit sending me paper contracts, like, I don't even know how to sign that, like, what am I supposed to take a picture of it? What are we doing here?" And I really wasn't ready to do, like, customer relationship management software. I just
Mhm.
the business wasn't at that size, but I was so irritated that I decided to jump into it anyway, and
Mhm.
my life vastly improved. It was a painful
Yes.
experience, but it vastly improved, and it was about noticing for myself, what did I need to change about how I worked in order to, like, let's say, grow my business,
Mhm.
and to add to that point, finding a way to be constantly uncomfortable and sustainable. Like, not trying to jump off the cliff. So, like,
Mhm.
not trying to, like, do the big thing in the business that, like, "Oh, that's super high risk. That's not I'm not ready for that." But where are the opportunities in the business where you can grow and develop yourself alongside what you're offering? and stay with the discomfort of maybe you're doing it before you feel ready,
Mhm.
because you may never be ready if you keep waiting.
Okay, so that's great advice. So the sweet spot between those two things, like kind of managing the tension between.
Yeah,
Okay, that is great advice. And if I may, can we get a little bit nerdy on your CRM? I love tool talk. So
absolutely.
what was a tool you started using?
Yeah, so I looked into a number of them because I, right, am connected in the lawyer coach world, and that was my idea of like, what are lawyers expecting to see?
Mhm.
And what are my like clients as lawyer coaches using? And in my research, the person who I respected the most and what I found like this is how I think it should be done in my mind was using the tool Coach Accountable.
Hmm.
She since left it because she found it to be too expensive.
Mhm.
So I don't know what she's doing now. She's doing something else. But I stayed with it and I love it. I love it because all of the contracts, GDPR, it's
Mhm.
all there. The booking, it's integrated with my calendar, it's there.
Mhm.
There's a private workspace for my clients. So before
Mhm.
they'd have to, find the emails and who said what when and all this stuff. And it's all contained. I can share exercises, readings, or whatever. We can chat back and forth, and it's in a like a stream as opposed to right again searching for emails. I absolutely love it, and I agree that it's a bit expensive. And I just put that into the price of the work.
Yeah, and you know it's also expensive? A private secretary.
Thank you, thank you. That's right. That's right.
I really can't. I'm just gonna add on to this. I just went through a whole process of completely redoing my tech stack. And there is nothing like a bad tool to just really hobble your business, and there's
Yes,
nothing like the right tool to accelerate. And I
yes.
had been wrestling with CRMs. It's also tricky because, in Europe, payment processors and all that stuff, like I was looking at one called Bonsai. Half the time I really believe it. I believe, like, you've just gotta test a tool. The best tool is the one that you'll use. And so I'd be like, "Oh, this is nice. This is working." And then you get to some point where it's like, "Okay, I want this paid meeting," and, "Oh, sorry, we don't support that in the EU," or whatever.
Mhm.
So, but I finally found one, and I'm gonna plug it. This is my unofficial sponsor because 'cause I'm an affiliate, and I'll put it in the show notes, but I found one called Moxie that is great, and
Oh.
and it's designed for freelancers.
Mhm.
So it's same deal. It's got, the scheduling. I can set up client portals.
Mm.
It does all the payment processors for Europe. It's great. I love it. And I feel like I've like the last 6 months that I was on that other, I just felt like it was just I was kind of like not pushing some of my offers because I just didn't wanna deal with the tool and I couldn't make changes and I was gonna break, and I'm pretty technical. So, yeah, just 3 cheers for good tools.
Mm. Mm.
And
Yeah.
as you're talking, I have a client, a retainer client, and I know that I've seen these tools before, that are specific for coaches, and I was trying to remember the name of one of them. Is this a pretty major one?
I don't know,
Okay. Okay,
honestly.
because I've seen more than, or I feel like I've seen a couple, and I was thinking, she'd probably, because right now she's, like, using Acuity, but this, and I'm like, she probably could use one of these coaching CRMs. That would probably be better.
Yeah.
Because then
Yeah.
go ahead.
And I think also just from a coaching standpoint, right, where we well, okay, I do peer coaching and peer supervision. Like I don't do a lot of trainings and I don't
Mhm.
do consulting and all this other stuff. So to be able to survive on that work and to have, let's say, premium paying clients, I think this is a minimum for that
Mhm.
because you need to be able to show the value of the work from beginning to end.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
to hold them in that it very can be very challenging work for people. So how do you do that? And if you're a mess on your side,
Mhm.
like that just gets in the way of the work. And I think it's a yeah, minimum.
Yeah. Yeah, table stakes. All right, well, Laura, thanks a lot for coming on, and, where can people find you?
Thank you for having me. And you can find me on LinkedIn is the easiest because maybe people who are listening aren't in the groups that I'm in, and that's okay. And I mean, it's under my name, Lora McInturf. I think I have a LinkedIn business account on the Inner Advocate, but it's silent because I couldn't manage both, so I just do it under my name. And I welcome connections of all kinds, and the reason why I think it's important to reach out, because you don't know when you're going to need support of a certain kind,
Mm-hmm.
right? So even you and I have talked about working together, and I haven't decided to do it yet, but because we've already talked, like the seed is planted, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same for other people. Like, oh, maybe not right now. You're like, well, I don't need a coach, or I
Yeah.
I am a coach, but I don't need a supervisor, or I don't even know what that is, or a mentor coach. Not right now. Yeah, but at some point you might.
Yeah.
And to expand your network to include the possibilities means when the time comes, you're not scrambling around, or which is something that I um, suggest to people not to do. Even though I believe that referral business is important for all of
Mm-hmm.
us in the service
Mm-hmm.
world, it is still important to do your own research, because just because your best friend or your
Right.
neighbor had a great experience, especially in coaching,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean that that will work for you.
Correct. Correct.
So to have, let's say more cards on the table than just what your neighbor suggested, or, what your colleague at work thinks is great, to also have, okay, so I also know in my network these other people. Who do I feel like is the right
Yeah.
person for what I want to do? And that is what I'm gonna wave my flag on as a final point.
Okay. Another good piece of advice to end
Thanks.
on. And lastly, can you just say the name of the Facebook group again?
Yes. The expat one,
Yeah.
Women Expat Entrepreneurs Empowered Germany.
All right. Well, Laura, thanks for coming on, and I'll see you on LinkedIn.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening. You can find this episode and all other episodes of the Germany Expat Business Show at my website at www.eleanormeyerhofer.com/podcast. That's www.eleanormayerhofer.com/podcast. See you next time.